The Valve Steam Deck, or VSD. I got a special delivery the other night from Lord GabeN himself. This device hasn't left my hand since it got dropped off. I've got arthritis and I'm starting to look like the guy from Scary Movie 2, but it's all worth it because this device does absolutely everything. You want to do some retro gaming emulation? Gotcha, fam. How about some modern AAA blockbuster bangers with medium to high settings? Not a problem. How's the frame rate though? Locked 60 frames per second in most titles. How's the battery life on it, Kevin? We don't have to talk about that. Actually, we do. It's a review. Maybe you want to plug in some computer peripherals, keyboard, mice, and monitor, and get some productivity out of the way. Check your emails and build an Excel spreadsheet to rank your favorite Gamer Heaven videos. Or maybe you just want to use this device as 80% of people will, being able to seamlessly and effortlessly use the majority of your Steam library on the go. Today, we're going to unbox, set up, and review the VSD and judge it on a multitude of categories, including screen, speakers, hardware, software, rear buttons, thumbsticks, and triggers, and find out if this device is worth getting a sore back sitting in the reservation lobby. And most importantly, who is this device good for? Hardcore PC gamers? Casual console players? It's literally good for everybody. So what model do you pop for, as there are three versions? Well, I'm going to get it out of the way up front. The three devices are identical except for the storage. You do have 64 gigabytes of eMMC memory, which is the slowest in the entry-level model for $400 US. The mid-tier model is $530. That gets you 256 gigabytes of storage. Still not nearly enough for modern AAA games. That is NVMe SSD storage, so it is going to be quicker. The model we're testing here today is the $650 512 gigabyte flagship, which has an NVMe SSD, which is rated at faster read and write speeds than the mid-tier model, and does come with a quote more premium carrying case. It is nice, but it doesn't make me feel like I'm a special girl or anything like that. It's not like a wooden and metal box or anything like that, like a little treasure chest. I don't think this should be a deciding factor when choosing your Steam Deck package. You do also get an exclusive Steam Community Profile bundle. Haven't even redeemed that yet. I have redeemed the exclusive virtual keyboard theme. It's meh. There are some better ones in the store. You can log into your Steam account to reserve one of these bad boys, and this is constantly updated, but as of now, for each model, they are estimated for Q4, meaning between October to December of 2022 delivery. And how the actual process works is you put down $5 to reserve your Steam Deck. Then whenever your device is ready, you will get an email from Steam saying, hey, you now have 3 days or 72 hours to go ahead and log in, pay the remainder of your device, and we'll ship it out to you. It took about 4 days for me to get my device in hand after that email. But there's a $250 difference between the entry and flagship models of the Steam Deck. And you can buy the base model for $400 and then buy the premium anti-glare etch screen and the NVMe SSD storage out of the flagship and install that in this entry-level model. Is that more cost-effective? How difficult is the install? Does that void my warranty? Will it perform the same as if I just bought the flagship from Steam? All good questions. All will be answered in a 6 to 8 minute video in the near future. Not doing it here. We're just doing an initial impressions review. Moving on with it. Now in this box, we have a little treat from Valve, or Lord GabeN himself, and this is going to be the Valve Steam Deck, or VSD handheld PC, the 512 gigabyte NVMe model with the anti-glare screen. On the top of the box, you have different languages telling you different places that you can play your new handheld PCs, such as on the subway or on the Ferris wheel, in a test chamber. At first I was like, this is getting a little bit dark, but they're probably talking about Portal. Attention, I don't really... This device already has my full attention. We know that. Steps 1 and 2. Plug it in. Power it on. I can follow thus far. Anything more, I will get lost. What have we got in here? Accessories, I would assume. You have your instruction pamphlet or brochure. If you've been around the channel a while, you know I'm a bit of a connoisseur or snob when it comes to these bad boys. Now, the parchment isn't very fine, but I will say that the ink is most likely imported. Let me translate. What the hell does that mean? Well, English is the primary language, but the font is pretty small, so you have to squint a little bit. This actually isn't an instruction manual. This is just health and safety information, telling you not to autoerotic asphyxiate yourself with the cord and whatnot. Don't do anything that Lord GabeN wouldn't do. Then you have the actual device in here, which is already much lighter than I expected. Your games are going places. You're not, but your games are. And since you're playing them, technically, by default, maybe you can ride their coattails. So you have this little holographic action here, kind of looks like a rare Pokemon card. I'm gonna go ahead and try and keep that intact and just slide her out of her outer sleeve, kind of like peeling a banana, so you can save the peels for later. Now, this does have a nice little raised, rubberized Valve logo. You do have a rubberized pull tab, and you do have a safety or tamper seal. If this is broken, that means that somebody has gotten into your device, done something something janky, so maybe call Valve and let them know. Luckily, this one is still sealed. Also, there's this little elastic band, and underneath there you have a little pouch over here, a little baggie, so you can put some lucky ribbons in there and whatnot. I'm sure it's probably for earbuds and maybe the charger. Oh, baby! All right, so let's set the device down for just a minute. What is this? And you have a microfiber wiping cloth for this display. It does come with a non-modular USB-C fast charger. Use it, don't lose it, because they are between $25 and $40 online. That is a PD 3.0 power supply, which is going to give you up to 45 watts for fast charging. Make sure you use this because you will actually be increasing your battery life while gaming while plugged in, versus using a non-authorized charger, like for example, your cell phone brick. You're actually still going to be losing battery life while gaming plugged in. I'm going to give you my opinion and the touchy-feelies about all the hardware, the face buttons, thumbstick, trackpad, rear buttons, etc. But for now, first start. Let's see if she turns over on the first stroke of the key. Change the spark plug. She's got fresh oil in her. Should be fine. Right there on the top. Don't need an instruction manual for that. Should I charge it up first? Probably. Am I going to? No. I'm excited. Nothing. It doesn't mean that she's DOA or dead on arrival. The battery might be completely depleted. Oh yeah, she's tapped. She's depleted. When I unboxed it and saw the sheer size and magnitude of it, I thought, wow, that's going to be a heavy device. It really is not. Those rear buttons are like pretty serviceable, actually. But before we have our way with the backside, let's talk about her front side, because she looks good there as well. Yep, I just plugged her into USB-C and she automatically started doing stuff. I see a Valve logo right there. I'm not even plugged into a microphone. I don't even have a light on my face. I'm just talking right now. So you actually do need to plug into power via that USB-C in order to do your initial start. There we go. Set the mood for us. Can't use the trackpads right now. Can use the Dpad. Can use the left analog stick. English is my native tongue, ladies. Okay, it's installing SteamOS. Guess what? To use your new Valve hardware, you got to have some Valve software. Log into your Steam account, please. Oh my God. So first of all, the haptic feedback in the palms, the little vibration you're getting. Also the sound effects. And keep in mind, I'm using the haptic trackpads right now. I'm not really swiping on them. I'm just touching them like a D-pad on the four corners. Keep in mind, this is also touchscreen. So once I logged in with my Steam account, I had to do a little security authorization with a 5-digit code. And then on my PC, which I'm logged into Steam on, I got a little pop-up saying, hey, new device added to your Steam account. Oh yeah, it's official. All right, so it says press any physical button or tap on the screen to continue. Let's do it. Now, let me bring you in for a little bird's eye view. We're going to talk about these extensively during the controls and layout section of the review, but what you need to know is that the Steam button is your friend. You run into any trouble, hold down the Steam button. And you're going to be using this micro SD card slot to expand the storage no matter what model you got, but definitely the 64 gig. Load times will be slightly longer on the SD card, however, gameplay will be identical. As for weight and dimensions, there's no getting around it. This is a large device, but it is still portable, the same way a Switch is portable. You can play this thing around your house, on the couch, or in bed, or take it on the go by throwing it in a backpack, purse, or laptop bag, but you're not chucking this in any pockets unless you got some sick cargo pockets. Now, I know the device that everyone's going to compare it to is going to be the Nintendo Switch, which is a completely different device because this is a handheld gaming console and this is a portable gaming PC. What's up, dudes? So I'm editing the video right now and I realized that those two terms are almost identical. Portable and handheld, I basically just reworded the same thing. However, console and personal computer are two completely different devices, and I think that's where the separation needs to be made. But the gaming experience is more similar to a console than it is a PC when you're in that Steam operating system. But when you break free into the desktop experience, then it's more like a personal computer. More on this later. As you can see, it is larger than the Switch OLED or organic light emitting diode model over here that I have reviewed on the channel, but not that much bigger. And you might be thinking, Kevin, that doesn't look like my Switch. This has some aftermarket NYXI Joy-Cons and a couple of little thumbstick caps on there, but at the end of the day, this is a stock Switch OLED. Also, if you've been around the channel a while, you know we leave nothing stock here at Gamer Heaven, so don't expect the Steam Deck to be looking like this for very long. A little bland, a little vanilla, a little missionary. I want to twist her around and spice things up. D-Brands, perhaps, if you're watching, maybe you could send over a couple of those skins or decal kits for review. I'll sweet talk you offline. We'll talk about it later. So while it is noticeably visibly larger than something like the Nintendo Switch, it is very comfortable, which we'll talk about during the ergonomics section, and it is substantially lighter than it appears to be from its large size. Show you what I mean here. 671 grams for the VSD. Manufacturer's advertised weight for the stock Switch OLED and Valve Steam Deck on screen here. I was gonna bust out the soft measuring tape to see if her hips lie, but luckily Nintendo and Valve have been very upfront on their websites about the dimensions of their devices, so that would be listed on screen right here. here. But just looking at how this modern gaming device mammoths over a portable gaming device of days past, it is absolutely mammothing or towering over this PS Vita, which has a relatively bulky case on it as well. You know what? Let's pull a couple wild cards into the equation. It's bigger, it's bigger, it's bigger. Now we've got a Sega Game Gear over here, which is one of the biggest handheld consoles from back in the day. And as you can see, the Valve Steam Deck is saying, hey buddy, you're tiny. Ergonomics and comfort, because weight and dimension, that's just stats, that's just numbers. What about the actual user experience, the actual hands-on, practical feeling on the fingertips or gamer icicles when you're using this bad boy? In this video, we are going to break down the VSD by each individual piece of hardware, such as the trackpad, thumbsticks, face buttons, triggers, bumpers, back buttons, etc. However, the overall comfort is very, very good. If you have played with something like a Nintendo Switch with aftermarket, larger, more ergonomic Joy-Cons, or you have played some kind of a handheld gaming PC like the Win3 GPD, I'm saying that incorrectly, GPD Win3, right? Or the Aya Neo, or the other one that I constantly forget the name of. This is more comfortable than all of those, and I have to say that comes down to the shell design. I think the rear is very sculpted, and everyone likes a nice sculpted rear, and wrapping my hands around it, it is a very nice place to rest your palms for hours on end. Well, not too many hours because battery life. Whole section about that later. Because this device is a lot lighter than you would expect it to be, you don't really get a lot of fatigue on the wrist, even if you are holding the device out like this, which you probably don't. You probably hold it in like this, maybe with your elbows up on a pillow or couch cushion or significant other's thigh or whatever you be resting on. And the two biggest concerns I had for ergonomics or comfort was going to be these front analog sticks or thumbsticks, because, well, not only are they symmetrical, and I generally prefer offset sticks like what you're going to get on an Xbox, but they're up top here with the D-pad directly to the left and the face buttons directly to the right. And I was thinking, oh my golly, that's a recipe for disaster. I don't know who cooked up this recipe, but it's delicious and I'm going in for seconds and thirds. Again, we have an entire thumbstick section of this review. However, just by looking at my hand positioning right now, this is how I want to naturally hold this device. And I can easily slide my fingertips off the analog or thumbsticks onto the face buttons or D-pad or trackpads if I need to. Not to mention, you've got 4 remappable rear buttons. Ergonomically, it is a real treat. I'm giving stock ergonomics and comfort a 4 out of 5. I think with a couple of aftermarket modifications, we can get it up to 5 out of 5. Now, a quick public service announcement. If you are a fan of Valve hardware, consider subscribing to the channel, because in the very near future, I am unboxing and reviewing the Steam controller, the flagship Beast VR headset, the Valve Index, as well as this long-lost relic that basically lets you use your PC like a console, the Steam Link, which I actually got bundled with this brand new Steam controller on eBay. I think it was under $80. Pretty sick. So I wanted to relay that onto you, that all of Lord GabeN's creations will be reviewed right here on Gamer Heaven. On, in, around the channel orifices. Now, build quality, this is where things get a little bit wonky, and I think it's the plastics that Valve decided to go with, and I think they went with this for grip. It's a little bit of stippling or texturing, but it makes the plastics on the front and rear shell feel a little bit cheap in my opinion, which isn't too detrimental considering there is already a vast third-party aftermarket support. Possibilities are endless with this thing. But the build quality, as soon as you get this device in hand, you're gonna think, this is a little bit cheap. But then as you start to play with it, you realize that maybe it was a strategic move by Valve to get a little bit more grip or stippling. Like I mentioned, I think they chose this plastic on purpose. Also, on my particular model, there's a dead silent left trigger squeeze, but the right trigger has an audible squeaky spring in there. Check this out. Hopefully that stops over time as I break her in, or I might need to disassemble it and replace that spring, because that's kind of annoying. Granted, I usually have the volume up pretty loud on this, or I have earbuds or a headset Bluetooth to this. Other than that, clicking down or pushing in the right trackpad sounds slightly different and more clicky and hollow than the left trackpad, which I don't like. I have no major complaints on the overall build quality of the VSD. There was no major panel gaps. The seams aren't coming apart where the front and rear shell meet. I did take a miniature Phillips head screwdriver and all of these rear screws were firmly affixed. Nothing was broken, defective, or faulty, but because of those small issues I mentioned, I am giving build quality 3 out of 5. Now, as for a quality control reputation, I wouldn't say that Valve has a bad quality control reputation. However, they do have a historical track record of discontinuing their products and stopping support for them. They've been consistent hosting the largest PC gaming platform in the world, Steam. But when it comes to their hardware, if you look at failed attempts like the Steam controller, which they ended up selling for $5 on their website, basically just trying to get rid of their inventory, or the Steam Link, which had a small cult following, and then there was their actual console attempt, this bad boy, which didn't work out. So the only 2 real successful pieces of hardware tech from Valve thus far, in my opinion, would be the Valve Index VR headset, which isn't really widely accepted like the Oculus Quest 2 because, well, it's very expensive and you have to have a powerful gaming PC, you have to set up external
base stations and sensors in your room, but overall, a successful product. And the Steam Deck is a little bit too new, a little too green around the ears for us to judge if this is a successful product and if Valve is going to continue support. It is worth mentioning that they do have a track record of literally obliterating support for their hardware. So hopefully that doesn't happen with the Steam Deck. I do not think it will. This has gotten a very positive response from the gaming community and industry. And as I'll touch on during the verdict section of this video, it offers an astronomical value that is uncomparable to any handheld gaming experience.
So what about a warranty on the sucker in case, God forbid, something goes wrong? You do get a 1-year limited warranty from Valve. Be careful because there are companies like Upsy, or as I'm going to call them, Oopsie over here, which is trying to sell a limited third-party warranty. I'd be savagely careful with anything like that because it just screams scam to me. And unfortunately, when I Googled Valve Steam Deck warranty, this was literally one of the first websites that popped up. This should probably be flagged on Google because I don't trust it. But this is the official Valve hardware warranty page. This will be linked in the description below if I remember. If not, you can pause the video and type in this URL manually. And they're sporting the definition of fine print. I had to hit control and scroll up on my mouse wheel over here to be able to read this because I don't have the eyes of an eagle anymore. Limited warranty, 1 year from the date of shipment, which covers specifically hardware not working properly due to a defect in materials or workmanship, and provided you follow the return instructions set forth below for obtaining warranty service. So you gotta mind your P's and Q's as well if your device fails due to Valve's quality control. You better follow the steps correctly to make sure that your warranty gets honored. And they will either repair the hardware or replace it for a new or refurbished product, so that's always fun. Instead of getting a brand new version, you're getting a refurbished, already had been fucked up, then repaired version. With equal or greater features and functions as the hardware, so you get a little upgrade. So it's like when you total your car, but you've got gap insurance, so you can get the next model year with the extra horsepower. And then they also have a 90-day return period as well. Usually companies limit that to 30 days if you just don't like the product for any reason and want to return it. As for controls and layout, wait a second, I need you in my hands. Bam, there we go. Now we're cooking with that grease. I gotta hold this bad boy at kind of an angle, cocked like that, or else you get a nasty reflection from my ring light. Controls and layout, I was a little bit nervous watching other reviews and seeing pictures of this device before getting hands-on time with it, specifically because of the analog sticks, because they're symmetrical and also they're up top here. But honestly, just holding the device naturally and comfortably as I want to rest my hands, everything feels very natural and comfortable. I played some retro platformers with the D-pad and face buttons, played some first-person shooters with the analog sticks and the rear buttons. Then I also played some shooters running around with the left analog stick, but using the right trackpad to aim, which the trackpads are pretty interesting. It works actually like the trackball on those old school mice where it's a one-to-one movement. So if you fling this thing, it actually reads your acceleration. So depending on how much you sling that bad boy, you have your micro SD card in the bottom to expand the storage, which you will need to do. You have your stereo speakers here. You have your Steam button right here, which will pop you into, well, your Steam menu. These 3 dots will pop open a hardware shortcut, which lets you set things like a frame rate limit to maximize battery life, adjust screen brightness and volume quickly, check out what your friends are doing on Steam, and report an issue or bug. You can also pop open the virtual keyboard at any time, which does come in handy and you will be using this frequently. One of the nicest and most welcome features that I use constantly is this performance overlay, which has 4 different levels. Off being nothing in the left-hand corner, level 1 being just your frames per second. Level 2, which is what I keep it on almost 100% of the time, gives you your GPU and CPU usage, your battery life, your power draw and wattage, your estimated remaining battery time, your current frames per second and input delay in milliseconds, your minimum, maximum, and average frame time, and then this little green line or graph, which gives you a real-time indication of your performance. Switching it to level 3 is going to give you some VRAM indications, and level 4 is going to give you the individual clock speeds for each of the cores on the processor. So awesome if you're running some kind of benchmarks. But for most people, I think level 1, 2, or off is going to be the most common. Everything is easy to reach and works exactly as it should, including the rear buttons, which I've heard a lot of hoopla and complaints about, but they're actually pretty damn good. On the top, you do have your volume up and down buttons, which are slightly raised out of the shell to make them easy to hit. You have a 3.5mm headphone jack. You do have one of the 2 exhaust ports on the top, the second one being right here in the back. Now, these do blow an astronomical amount of heat. However, they miss your hands completely because wherever you want to hold your hand is nowhere near the exhaust vents, so that's awesome. You have your start and select button. You have 4 face or action buttons. You have 2 track pads, which are pressure sensitive, and they can also read your thumbs even when they're just resting on the trackpads but not pressing them. 4 rear buttons are remappable in every single game. You do have a USB-C port up top for charging with a LED status light, and the power button, which unlike the volume buttons is actually sunken in flush or slightly inward on the shell, making it harder to hit. A single press of the power button will lock your device, and it's awesome. You can actually suspend PC games from your Steam library on the fly. Now, if you want to fully power down your Steam Deck, you are going to hold down the power button for about 3 seconds, and you will get this option here. And this is also how you are going to switch into desktop mode, which we will be talking about extensively, how you can use the VSD as, well, an actual desktop PC. As for the display, the screen, what you're going to be staring staring at, let's get the nitty-gritty squeeze-a-titty specifications out of the way. 1280 by 800p is the resolution, 7-inch diagonal, that's the screen size, 400 nits is your peak brightness, refresh rate 60 hertz or 60 frames per second. And is it a touchscreen? You can click her, she will respond to you. Yes, it's a multi-touch capacitive touchscreen. Now, I will say the 7-inch 800p 60 display does look good for an IPS panel. However, in color vibrance, peak brightness, as well as overall perceived crispness and how good the display looked, it is about equal to the standard Switch, which is a 6.2-inch LED display, but it is a noticeable step down from the 7-inch OLED on the Switch. Well, OLED. I will say I wish the peak brightness was just slightly higher, specifically for outdoor gaming. Indoors, it's not too bad unless, well, you're sitting under a ring light or something. 60 hertz is a completely acceptable frame rate for mobile gaming, and 800p is a decent resolution. And because that is a relatively low number in the resolution scale, you're able to run most games on medium to high settings in a $400 piece of tech. That's impressive. Also, it is worth noting that the entry and mid-tier model have a standard glossy screen, and the flagship model, the 512GB, does have an etched anti-glare screen with a matte flat finish. Unfortunately, I haven't got my hands on the other two Steam Deck models to compare them, but I will say this does a pretty good job of rejecting light sources from around my room. However, you do still get a little bit of glare. As for the onboard speakers, you do have stereo embedded for DSP, which is meant for an immersive listening experience. What the hell does all that mean? I don't know. I just read it off the website. In practice, I will say one of the things that I noticed immediately playing Half-Life 2 is you get a very good stereo spread. So very good situational awareness of where enemies are. And if a character or NPC is talking to you and you tilt your character off to the left or right, you will clearly hear that spread off to each speaker. It's great. They also get very, very loud without getting distorted. I do wish there was just slightly more bass or low end, but for small speakers, they do sound much better than I expected. They sound a lot better than the Switch OLED or virtually any other handheld gaming PC or console I played. Not to mention, a lot of people that are going to play this on the go will end up plugging in some kind of a headset or Bluetoothing some earbuds. The D-pad and face buttons. Well, the D-pad unfortunately is a little bit squishy for my taste. It is a membrane design, so it does have a rubber plunger under there. They didn't go with a mechanical tactile clicky switch, which is relatively unfortunate because those are rated for millions of clicks and do feel substantially better on the fingertips. As for the face or action buttons, they are relatively small and a little bit too close or clustered together for my taste. I can easily cover all four of them with my skinny little thumb. They're a little bit squishy and mushy because, again, membrane design, rubber plunger underneath here. Neither the D-pad or face buttons are going to blow your tits back. They don't feel great by any means. However, they are serviceable and you can game like this. As for the thumbsticks, analog sticks, joysticks, I could have swore that the VST had magnetic Hall effect sensors. However, it does not, but these are by far the best analog sticks that I've felt in a handheld gaming device. This comes down to a couple of factors. First of all, they are substantially taller and wider, much more reminiscent of something like a full-size controller on PlayStation or Xbox, meaning you have a lot more travel or leverage, so you're going to be a lot more accurate in first-person shooters. Also, the rubber or silicone compound that they went with is pretty grippy. However, I would recommend for you hardcore shooter players that use some kind of thumbstick caps like Control Freaks, which we will test in just a minute what work on here. Actually, so I don't forget, let me set them out. Got me a lot of thumbstick caps, apparently. Well, these only work with aim controllers. These ones are universal and slip over anything, so these will work for sure. And these are Control Freaks. These ones are for Nintendo Switch controllers. Okay, completely loose and wiggly and don't even stay on. This one is for PlayStation 4 and 5. Again, these are licensed Control Freak thumbstick caps. Loose and wiggly, doesn't even stay on. And these ones are for Xbox One and Series Brothers. Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner, Johnny. Sort of. Like, not really. It stays on there. It's the only one that'll stay on there, but it's incredibly loose and wiggly. I wouldn't rate this as serviceable. I wouldn't play like this. But what you can do, again, is some universal slip-over thumbstick caps, which work with virtually anything. I'll prove it right now. I told you so, sweetheart. I really did believe that these were magnetic thumbstick modules after using them. I had to look it up and deem myself a moron because they do glide incredibly smooth. In fact, the only two controllers that I've felt that were this buttery with the thumbsticks had magnetic Hall effect sensors in the thumbsticks. But these are fantastic, and unfortunately, if you do develop stick drift over time, these aren't necessarily modular like Joy-Cons that pop on and off. However, Valve is all about repairing and even upgrading these devices, and they do have a full teardown video on their YouTube channel showing you how to replace the thumbstick modules, which, by the way, I recently found out is soldering not required. They just simply drop in, hot swap them, they're modular. And the company Ghoulie Kit offers magnetic Hall effect thumbstick modules for around $25 a pop. These also are capacitive touch, meaning if you just rest your thumb on the thumbsticks. Popular use is the gyroscope motion sensing will kick in whenever
whenever your thumb is resting on the right trackpad or right analog stick. So if you just rest your finger on the right analog stick, you can aim with those finite precise movements with the gyroscope, which I turned off almost immediately because I think it's kind of gimmicky and actually intrusive and annoying. But what's not intrusive and annoying is these thumbsticks. They're bomb. 5 out of 5. Didn't realize this bad boy wasn't turned on. Come on, I need you producing steam. Yeah, geez. Now, as for these elusive and illustrious trackpads over here, you either love them, hate them, or you just don't give a damn because you never use them. Now, we've seen these before. They were on the Steam controller. However, these are advertised as being 55% more accurate and responsive. Yeah, I use the Steam controller and I would have to say that is true. Now, what I do like about these is these are actually a one-to-one representation of your movement. So it's acceleration based. So if you just gently swipe, it might pan your camera slow. You flick aim, you're going to be doing a 180 to shoot the guy behind you. It's great. Also, they are capacitive touch, so depending on how hard you press them, you can have different features or functions that get activated depending on how hard you press it. And the plastics or surface area is identical to the rest of the shell. Now, in every single game that you launch through SteamOS, you are going to have control of these trackpads. Do you want them to function as a D-pad? Do you want them to work as a single button press? Or do you want them to work like analog sticks where you can aim like a trackpad? I'm glad that these trackpads are on this device because there are certain games that will make very good use out of them, like RTS or real-time strategies. And I actually did use these quite a bit in some first-person shooters, and not only were they playable, but I could see myself being accurate, proficient, and winning matches if I were to get a little bit more time on these pads. 5 out of 5. I like them on the Steam controller, and these are more accurate. Triggers and bumpers. Well, the bumpers, they sit in a very good ergonomic position where you want to naturally rest your finger. They have a nice satisfying tactile click. They're not mechanical, they are membrane, but they do feel good. No complaints there. As for the triggers, I am a big old fan because they are linear, unlike the Nintendo Switch triggers, which are simply on or off, 0 or 100. These are fully linear, so if you're playing something like a racing game, you'll be able to modulate the throttle and brake. Or if you're playing a platformer where you need to squeeze the trigger halfway. They also do feel incredibly smooth with a very nice linear resistance, perfect snapback or rebound, and I actually do like the plastics that they used on the bumpers and triggers. It does feel good to the fingertips. I'm not going to take into account that squeaky spring on the right trigger because I'm hoping to baby Jesus that will go away over time, and also I docked a point for that during build quality section, so I'm not going to double down on her. Bumpers and triggers, 5 out of 5. Rear buttons or paddles? You know what? This is a serious topic. Let's go ahead and change the camera view. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say I know more about rear paddles and buttons than anybody that I've seen review the Valve Steam Deck on YouTube. I'm not going to say the opinion of other reviewers doesn't matter. I'm not going to say I'm the only person on the internet you got to listen to about back buttons. I'm not saying that this is my forte or I'm the definitive source for premium and custom controller reviews on YouTube. That would make me sound like a pompous asshole. The rear buttons on the Valve Steam Deck. You might want to refer to them as paddles. However, these are rear buttons as they are sunken into the rear shell, almost completely flush. They do have a nice satisfying tactile click. I do not believe that they are mechanical. They are a membrane switch, but they are incredibly tactile and clicky while still being virtually silent. They are in a very good ergonomic position, and you can cover all 4 of them simultaneously. You can also remap or rebind them in every single game. Not only are these rear buttons serviceable, but they are actually very good. In fact, I use them exclusively while playing Half-Life 2. I don't think I touched the face buttons more than a couple of times. My fingers were firmly affixed to these thumbsticks so I can remain walking and aiming while I'm doing things like jumping, crouching, and interacting with the environment. Rear buttons on this thing are really good. The other reviewers that said these were funky or they didn't like them, have you tested anything with rear paddles or buttons before? There is a slight learning curve when getting used to rear buttons, but guess what? If you don't like them because you accidentally actuate them or you just think they're stupid, you can turn them off.
You know what doesn't taste very good slamming down my gullet and doesn't leave a very good taste on my beak? Is the high rollers, the big dogs that pop for the nearly $700 flagship bundle. Get this cool little carrying case and all, but guess what? You don't get any kind of an adapter or dock or any kind of way to project this onto a TV or monitor and adapt USB peripherals such as keyboards and mice. Now you may be saying to yourself, Kevin, who cares? All you need to do is get yourself an HDMI to USB-C adapter. Correct. That's only about $18 on Amazon. This one will be linked in the description below. It is highly rated and inexpensive, but Valve should be including one of these, considering if this is the actual price for the consumer. I'm sure if Valve were to scoop these up in bulk, maybe put a little bit of Valve branding on each end, and then include these with maybe the middle and higher tier Steam Deck packages inside the carrying case in the meantime while their dock is delayed, because they did confirm that they are going to release what is called the Steam Dock, which is basically the dock for the deck. But to project an image out to a TV or monitor, all you need is a USB-C to HDMI adapter, which you can get very inexpensively on Amazon. And then if you want to use computer peripherals such as keyboards and mice, or even a USB controller, you get yourself a USB-C hub. All this is going to be included in the dock, but in the meantime, they should include some kind of inexpensive adapter, at least in the flagship model, which is pretty expensive. In the meantime, while Valve is finishing up development of their official licensed dock, there is this generic one for $60 on Amazon. It only has 3 reviews, so I was a little bit skeptical, but it did add up to 5 stars. I have ordered it. It will be here in a couple of days, and I will be reviewing it on the channel. And it essentially does exactly what the licensed Valve dock is going to do, and allows you to plug in a keyboard, mouse, maybe a controller, and cast your screen out to a TV or monitor, and even use the Valve Steam Deck itself as a controller while playing on your TV. Now, saving the best for last, smoke some grass and slap some ass, the speeds and feeds, as they call it over here on the website, which is actually going to be your tech specs. Now, these words and numbers on this page is what makes the Steam Deck such an amazing device, and literally uncomparable to any handheld gaming PC on the market, because it offers a tremendous value and performs better than all of its competitors for a fraction of the price. Let me break down exactly why. All the competitors, including the GPD Win3, the Aya Neo, and the other one that I still am forgetting the name of, those are all using existing components that are usually put into laptops or small form factor PCs, and then they're crammed into an extremely tiny case, so they're very loud because the fan is working overtime to cool them, and the performance really isn't that great because they're, well, low profile laptop components slammed into a tiny little handheld case, which isn't cost effective for them. So these are generally at least $800, if not around $1,500. The GPD that I tested was a $1,300 device. The components don't really communicate very well with each other, as opposed to the Valve Steam Deck over here, which is running an actual AMD APU, so very similar to what we see with the modern consoles, such as the PS5 and Xbox Series brothers, meaning that it is a CPU and GPU melded together into one component, so it communicates seamlessly with other components, including 16 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM, which is quad channel at 5500 MTs, which is freaking insane. So very high quality components here in an actual purpose built for this device, proprietary, I guess you could say, AMD APU. And if you look at the actual tech specs, this is nothing to scoff at. It's a Zen 2 architecture, 4 physical cores, 8 virtual threads, 2.4 to 3.5 gigahertz, which gets you up to 448 gangsta flops or G flops. How about the GPU or the graphics side of the house? Good question. You have 8 RDNA 2 fingernail cuticles at 1 to 1.6 gigahertz, which is going to give you about 1.6 T-flops of graphical performance when you strap her to the dyno test. How much power draw on that APU, Kevin? 4 to 5 watts. Well, that's cool and all, Kevin, that this uses a specific APU that's meant to work in this device. Does that alone make this a better handheld gaming PC? No, but when you take into account that Valve is also running its own unique operating system, SteamOS, that allows you to do things like suspend a PC game like you would do on a console and swap to another one, or have a very clean, easy to navigate user interface, or be able to quickly and easily pop up an overlay where you can limit your frame rate or extend your battery life, making it a very approachable, user-friendly experience to get more people into the PC gaming ecosystem, which is exactly what Valve was aiming to do with this device, because now you have a casual, carefree Switch-like experience with a PC library on the go. But if you want to get in the weeds and tinker and do some emulation, maybe add some ROMs, maybe run some third-party programs and applications, you can throw it in a desktop mode, and for the advanced users, you can tinker, maybe even put on a different operating system like Windows. Then you get down to the nitty-gritty squeeze a titty, which is the fact that the VSD outperforms its competitors generally 30 to 160% in not only benchmarks, productivity, but also most importantly, gaming on the go, for around, we'll say, a third of the price, because these handheld PCs generally go for about $1,200. And the entry-level VSD is $400 US. So more performance for less money, plus it's from a reputable company like Valve that is going to be pumping support into this, and it's got its own hardware and software which are meant to communicate with each other to make a seamless user experience. As for the software side of the house, it can be broken into 2 parts, which is going to be the Steam OS mode, which is its default safe boot mode, and then desktop mode if you want to tinker, add third-party launchers, emulators, or use this thing as an actual desktop PC. Granted, keep in mind it's Linux, so a lot of the programs and applications you're used to running might be optimized for Windows. Now, I'm a tremendous fan of Steam OS and the fact that when you turn on the console, this is the default boot mode, because it gives you a console-like experience that makes it very easy to browse and use this device in comparison to other handheld gaming PCs like the Win3 GPD, which uses Windows 10, and was very hard to read icons and text because they're very small. Not to mention, you can tell every day that that operating system's not meant for that mobile device because you have to go into subfolders, and it was just a pain in the tuchus. SteamOS lets you install your entire Steam library, and granted, a good chunk of the games will play perfectly. Some of them will be labeled as not playing very well. They will have a yellow or amber indicator next to them showing showing that it has some compatibility issues, such as the text being too small, or having to use the virtual keyboard frequently, or there being some frame rate or performance hiccups. But a lot of these games that are labeled as being partial compatibility or having limited issues play absolutely fine. And the issue is something so minuscule, such as you have to use the virtual keyboard for 5 seconds to enter your player name. Now, you can play a lot of games that are labeled as no support whatsoever by entering desktop mode and then forcing a compatibility layer through what's called Proton. Now, Proton is constantly running in the background on SteamOS, and what this does is works as a compatibility layer to allow you to play Windows games on this Linux-based operating system, SteamOS. And it does a pretty darn good job, I will say. It is constantly evolving and getting better over time, and you can manually select what Proton version you want to use. So if you're having some game compatibility issues or it simply won't launch, try a different Proton version. Your two best friends are going to be the Steam button and then these 3 dots, which brings you into the system hardware shortcuts. If you run into trouble at any time, hold down the Steam button for a few seconds and it will pop up an overlay with some shortcuts. And these are very handy. You can do things like increase or decrease the screen brightness, or even refresh or unstick a stuck game. And whenever you're playing a game, if you press the Steam button, you can adjust your controller settings to set up custom keybinds, including turning on and off the 4 rear buttons and binding them, adjusting or disabling completely the gyroscope or motion sensing, as well as the functionality of the trackpads. Do you want them to work as a D-pad? Do you want them to work as a capacitive touch button that has different functions depending on how hard you press it? Or do you want to flick it like a mouse trackball to aim? You can even set different functions or bindings for a half press or full press of the triggers, which I think is fantastic. So if you want to aim by pressing the trigger halfway and then fire by squeezing it all the way, you can do that in literally any game because this is part of the Steam overlay, not in-game settings. Also, while inside this SteamOS safe mode, we'll call it the little padded room, the bubble, if you will, which I do recommend new users of handheld PCs, specifically the Valve Steam Deck, stay in this operating system for a while before exploring desktop mode. But another perk of staying inside the Steam operating system is you can lean on the community heavily. There are forums built into this operating system for specific games. Users are uploading their own custom controller profiles and key bindings, and it just makes everything a very smooth, seamless experience. Desktop mode, not so much. If you're going to use it at all, I do strongly recommend using some kind of a USB-C hub to let you use a keyboard and mouse for easy navigation. And also I would recommend casting your image out to a monitor or TV. Because it is a desktop-like experience and you're on a 7-inch screen, text is rather small and God forbid you have to type in some kind of a text string or command prompt and you're typing that in with the virtual keyboard. Good luck. Now I will be doing some screen capture tutorials in the near future, walking you through how to optimize your Valve Steam Deck as well as install third-party launchers such as Origin, Epic, Microsoft Game Pass with xCloud streaming, GOG, and more, as well as install emulators like RetroArch to play your consoles of days past. But for the purpose of this initial impressions review, just know that I am a huge fan of the software. The operating system makes it very fluid, very smooth for new users that have never picked up a gaming PC. Well, typically you don't pick up a PC unless you're moving the sucker, but have never used a gaming PC. It makes it a very easy console-like experience, much like playing on a Nintendo Switch. But for the advanced users that are accustomed to tinkering on a full-size desktop, they can enter desktop mode and start running command prompts and scripts into this Linux-based operating system and getting real nitty-gritty and in the weeds. So I think it's good for casual users as well as advanced users. The pros, cons, and verdict of the Valve Steam Deck or VSD. We're going to get the cons out of the way because, well, there simply isn't very many of them. Keep in mind that this is an initial impressions review and I will be giving you updates periodically as I get more hands-on time behind the sticks and trackpads of this bad boy. Cons. Well, the main one is going to be the battery life. It is pretty horrendous. You can get as low as 1.5 hours if you're playing a AAA title at mid to high settings, 60 frames per second. You can eat right through a battery. So if you're on the go, you're going to want to pick up yourself some kind of an external power bank so you have an additional couple charges. And if you're playing at home, I would recommend just playing with it plugged in. You will not notice any performance differences plugged in or unplugged. And I have noticed in gaming laptops of the past, there's like a 30 to 60% performance difference when you're plugged into wall power versus not. And you don't get that here with the VSD, which is cool. I have heard other reviewers saying that the battery life was actually depleting while they were gaming plugged into wall power. I'd bet you my bottom dollar and a couple of lucky shekels that they were not using the factory charger that came with the device. I am also going to be doing an ultimate Valve Steam Deck build on this channel. One of the modifications or upgrades we're going to be doing is upgrading the battery to a higher milliamp hour. But in the meantime, the stock battery life is not great. Next up, the packaging the device comes in. It actually comes in an exposed outer box that you can clearly see what it is. So I've heard complaints of people saying that they're concerned that this could get stolen by their packaging carriers or their neighbors. $100, which makes perfect sense. So I would recommend that Valve starts using some kind of a outer box or a less conspicuous box. 3, I don't really think the included accessories for the premium package make it worth the experience. Granted, you are getting more memory and that anti-glare screen, but I feel like for the individuals like myself that popped for that premium or flagship bundle, which is not cheap by any means, and is $250 more than the entry-level model, which is the same damn device, should at least get some kind of a USB-C adapter to project this thing onto a TV or monitor in the meantime while Valve finishes their Steam dock, the dock for the deck. So that's a con, that you have to pony up an additional $18 to get a USB-C to HDMI adapter, because they won't include one, even if you got the flagship package. Next up, the screen. Yes, the entire screen. I'm listing it as a con. I do believe the bezels around the outside are slightly too large. I do wish it had more peak brightness. I will get my hands on the glossy screen version as well to see if that makes a difference for outdoor viewing. I do believe it will be worse because you're also getting the glare from the sun. I have no problem with the resolution of 1200 by 800p. I have no problem with the refresh rate of 60 hertz. I do think it needs more peak brightness. I do also wish it had more contrast and vibrance. For example, when I played it side by side with my Switch OLED, the OLED looks substantially better, which is unfortunate because the VSD has so much more graphical power than the Nintendo Switch, but the Switch OLED screen is better. So if those two devices could come together and you have like the screen from the Switch OLED in the more powerful VSD, that would be perfect or ideal, visually wise, graphically wise. Moving on. The next con would be that these devices are not readily available. You are going to have several months of wait time. And when I say several months, that's the worst part, is that it varies and fluctuates and you might not get any updates for a while. And since it is such an awesome device, it just sucks to be sitting there playing the waiting game. Now for the pros. Well, the biggest one is that this is the best handheld gaming PC on the market. Why? Because it has a proprietary APU built specifically for it, using the same AMD architecture as the modern consoles. In fact, this is a very console-like experience, even though I know it is a PC. But in addition to the hardware, the actual physical components not only inside the device, but also the outside with the trackpads, which are actually really good, the best thumbsticks I've ever used on a mobile device, a serviceable screen, some pretty damn good speakers, very ergonomic rear buttons, and an overall comfortable ergonomic shape. But also it has the software, the operating system to back it up, as it's using its own proprietary or unique operating system. All this thrown into a package that can be had for as low as $400 US. It's a tremendous value. The next pro would be the community around Valve. So we're talking about actual users on Steam that are using the Steam Deck, making their own keybinds, sharing information in forums such as the Valve Steam Deck subreddit. You can get troubleshooting solutions for damn near any issue you're having. Also, there's already a ton of third-party support on Amazon for accessories. Bluetooth. The fact that this has Bluetooth is awesome because you can link up some speakers and not be all tangled up in a cord. This is also a very versatile device as it is a PC. You can use it for some basic productivity work. Granted, it is a Linux-based operating system, but you could put Windows 10 on there or 11 and plug in a keyboard, mouse, and monitor and get to your workday. Then you get released from your shitty day job, disconnect the dongle with all those whack-ass peripherals connected, and go sit in a beanbag chair, crack a brewski, or smoke a spliff, whatever you do, and play some dank indie game off of Steam, or a third-party AAA blockbuster banger with the settings pinned out. It's so freaking versatile. You can do damn near anything with it. I can't recommend it enough because I do think it is a good, useful device for not only casual gamers that might like to play some indie titles or maybe some retro games. Maybe you're a Switch player, but you wanted to experience some new games that are on the Nintendo Switch. Or maybe you're a hardcore PC player. You've got Linux installed on your rig. You're entering a command prompt into the terminal right now. And you can have a hell of a good time with this Steam Deck as well. It just does so much. For such a modest entry price, you know Valve is taking a fat L or loss financially with these devices. They have to be.
To specify, not because they're selling enough units, these bad boys are sold out left and right, but I mean their actual production cost. The price of producing these has got to be breaking even, if not costing more than what they're charging the consumer.
Can't recommend this device enough. It'll be linked in the description below. If you want to make your pre-orders, your reservations, I would recommend it. For a ton of Valve Steam Deck content, keep it locked right here at Gamer Heaven, and drop in the comment section below your opinion of the Valve Steam Deck. Maybe you have a different handheld gaming PC like the Win3 GPD or the Aya Neo. I want to hear about it. Peace.
If you enjoyed the video, liking it helps it to get seen by more gamers. This information will reach and assist them as well, which in turn helps me grow this little channel, which I do greatly appreciate. Subscribe for more content like this. I cover news in the gaming community and industry, tutorials helping you get set up streaming and YouTubing, as well as honest gaming product reviews, keyboards, mice, headsets, controllers, mics, chairs, etc. There are some hefty exclusive discount codes found only in the description of my videos and only for the audience here at Gamer Heaven. Check out Into the AM for some of the sickest looking and most comfortable cloth to ever grace my gaming giblets. If you don't want to be scorching your corneas with harmful blue light, check out Gamer Advantage, the only blue light glasses on the market that look sexy and actually work. If you're looking for a custom controller that'll blow the competition's tits back, AIM definitively has the best bang for buck buck or price to performance when it comes to Xbox, PlayStation, and Switch controllers. Nope, they don't do Switch, but they do gaming mice. I said doo-doo. I have links to all my other platforms and socials in the description below. If you need a quick laugh or blast of gamer adrenaline, check my short form videos out at TikTok. To get in touch with myself and the stallions and stallionettes of gamer heaven, join the community Discord, and check me out at twitch.tv where I go live every other leap year on a blue moon if it falls into an odd calendar number, and my pH balance is on point. Just kidding, starting June I'm going to be live streaming a lot. Thanks for watching. This has been AK40 Kevin hosting Gamer Heaven, and I'll see you tomorrow because I upload daily, all the time, 60% of the time, sometimes, most of the time. Peace.